Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update.
Money FM 89.3. Now, according to the International Energy Agency, Southeast Asia is on course to account for 25% of global energy demand growth between now and 2035, second only to India over the period. And by mid-century, energy demand in this region is set to overtake that of the European Union. Growth is led by the electricity sector. In Singapore, while renewable energy accounts for about 5% of our total electricity generation, with solar power being the main contributor, there are robust renewable energy targets for the next several decades. Singapore is also importing low-carbon electricity from neighbouring countries, with a goal to reach around 6 gigawatts of low-carbon electricity by 2035, or one-third of our electricity supply. With the region poised at the intersection of growth and sustainability, there's immense potential for clean energy to fuel the next wave of economic and social progress. So on today's Industry Insight, we are speaking with someone who's very passionate about green energy, so much so he's co-founded a business supplying 100% energy that it claims is not only renewable, but also affordable. Matthijs Guichelaar, co-founder and CEO of Flow Energy, joins me now. Welcome, Matt. Great to have you on the show this afternoon.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Now, Matt, before we discuss the trends in the renewable energy industry, tell us about Flow Energy and your passion for this fast-evolving sector.
Yeah, sure. So Flow Energy Singapore is the country's fastest growing and largest independent retailer, with a very clear mission to switch as many people as possible to affordable and renewable energy and energy solutions. Since we've launched in 2021, we've served over 1,750 large businesses and customers and supplied over 2 terawatt hours of renewable electricity. We're part of Flow Holding, and we've expanded our reach and mission in 2024 with the launch of Flow Energy Australia, really targeting to becoming the leading renewable energy retailer in the region.
All right. And coming from the Netherlands, you must have a unique view of Southeast Asia's energy market as an electricity retailer. So in Singapore, we've seen the energy retail market deregulate over the past decade. What can you tell us about the current landscape in the energy transition, and how are retailers adapting to the increasing demand for renewable energy?
Yeah, so I think generally speaking, the deregulation in Europe and the Netherlands specifically took place earlier than here in Singapore. So in that sense, I think the evolution of the energy landscape in Europe is slightly ahead, but what we see is that Singapore especially is picking up pace and setting very high ambitions towards 2035. I think, obviously, Singapore being Singapore with limited land available, the options for Singapore to deploy onshore renewable energy generations are limited and it's challenging. But I think Singapore has a very great view on how it can still achieve its ambitions by importing and developing local renewable electricity production in the region. I think what Singapore and Southeast Asia in general should develop more is the collaboration between the countries, as you can see. So Europe effectively has a very efficient and robust energy infrastructure spanning across countries, and also a lot of interconnection between the various countries, and each of the countries having its own specific energy mix, combination of wind, solar, hydro, which is for a large part of the time complementary to each other. And I think if Singapore manages to set up a similar, or effectively Southeast Asia has managed to set up a similar, let's say, interconnection between the various grids, it would greatly increase the success and robustness of the renewable energy system.
Wow, that sounds really exciting indeed. And the energy market across this region is incredibly varied. How do you see the energy landscape evolving in neighboring countries? And if Flow Energy were to consider expanding in the region, what are the key challenges in bringing renewables to places like Thailand, Malaysia, or Indonesia?
Yeah. So for these countries, it would require a very significant market reform. The majority of these countries have what's called a single buyer, which means that there's one entity, typically government-owned, that actually buys all the electricity from the generators, whether they're state-owned or independent power producers, and sells them to the end customer, either being CNIs, SMEs, or residential customers. So in order for them to be able to support, let's say, the evolution of this system, they would need to unbundle. Typically, grid companies have the single buyer become more of a buying, selling platform where customers can bid for the supply and demand of electricity. So before we're there, I think Singapore has gone through this process, obviously. There needs to be quite some political change, I guess, as well, in order to support these kind of activities. And yeah, for us, it would be very interesting, obviously, if we can indeed expand into countries like Malaysia, because they're already interconnected with Singapore, so that would also allow us to sort of cross-sell energy between the countries to effectively manage our portfolio.
And your unique proposition, Flows Energy, that is that you supply 100% renewable energy. So without giving away any trade secrets, how do you do it? And compared to other retailers in the market, what are the challenges industry players like yourself face in terms of sourcing and supplying renewable energy?
Yeah, so we kind of distinct two types in this case. One is the Singaporean produced renewable electricity, which is often used by companies that are committed to the RE100 framework. So usually larger multinational companies. And the RE100 framework has very strict rules and regulations around where the electricity has to be produced, in this case inside of Singapore. So you can imagine that limited supply drives up the cost for locally produced renewable energy significantly. And then we have the energy that's produced in the region. So in nearby countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, where there also is renewable electricity produced. And for the other part of the customers that don't require what we call local renewable energy certificates, we supply them with the regional renewable energy certificates so that they're still contributing to the further development of renewable production assets. And at the same time, these renewable energy is aligned with Singapore Standard 673. So our customers are also able to report on that in their annual report.
Okay. When it comes to renewable energy, one of the concerns is often the cost, right? So how does your company ensure that renewable energy remains competitive with traditional energy sources?
Yeah. So Flow Energy is effectively a technology company. So we build our own platform, automate our own processes, and just make sure that our what's called in the industry our cost to serve is extremely low. So we have a little bit of buffer that we can spend on, let's say, the additional cost for the renewable electricity. And the other savings that we have, we pass back to our customers. So we've been very successful in offering very sharp rates, which are 100% renewable to our customers, and still maintain the profitability as a company.
And what impact does the cost of renewable energy have on your pricing structure for consumers? And, you know, if you could walk us through what options are available for customers who want to buy renewable energy.
As said, there are effectively, let's say, two major options, and you can split one of the options into two. So let's say you have three options. One is local Singapore RECs, which is the most expensive. They're typically around 10 cents of premium if you want to have locally RECs used to prove that you've been consuming local renewable electricity. Then you have a choice of regional produced renewable electricity. That impact is typically, say, up to, I would say, half a cent per kilowatt hour. And the other regional RECs are below that price. But again, because we don't need to recover a lot of overhead and costs we have as a company, the base price setting is already lower. So typically a energy retail price, as people can see from the regulated tariff, is made up of, let's say, the bare commodity cost, the grid cost, and then what we call cost to serve, which is effectively the overhead that we have as a company, and then renewable energy certificates. So because the bit of overhead or cost to serve of our company is extremely low, we're able to add effectively a premium price component in the likes of a renewable energy certificate without being more expensive or actually being cheaper than our competition.
Oh, wonderful. But having said that, has there been a rise in renewable energy subscription plans for residential consumers? What are you seeing in terms of the take-up?
Yeah, so in terms of residential consumers, Flow Energy has been supplying C&I and SME exclusively up until now. But last year, we've actually received, as the first independent retailer ever since the update of the regulatory framework, we've received our what's called OEM approval, which is the Open Electricity Market approval, which now also allows us to retail to residential customers. And at this point in time, we're in the midst of building that proposition and making sure that when we hit the residential market somewhere later this year, we have the best proposition for our customers. So on the uptake for us as a company, I can reflect on that, let's say, in the second half of this year.
Okay. Look forward to that, Matt. Now, you mentioned earlier that Flow Energy is a technology company, so we can't not talk about the role of digitalization. So tell us more about the digital tools in this sector, things like smart meters, energy management apps, even blockchain for transactions. How is your company leveraging these technologies to improve customer experience and energy efficiency?
Yeah, so we are obviously what people refer to as a cloud-native company. So everything we build and host is in the cloud, so we have no local cost on hardware or anything. What the technologies that we effectively leverage is highly scalable infrastructure. For C&I and SME, if they want to move away from the SP group to us or from a different retailer to us, one of the prerequisites in the market, as mandated by the EMA, is that they have a smart meter. So we have 30-minute interval data of our customers, which allows us to very accurately profile their electricity consumption. So on a daily basis, we process millions and millions of meter readings and have a very clear view on what our customers are consuming and at what time of the day they're consuming it. And we feed back that information to the customers using our Flow Smart dashboard. So we have a proprietary Flow Smart platform, which consists of a dashboard where our customers can see their electricity consumption per half hour, the distribution between peak and off-peak, their electricity prices, so they can see for any given 30 minutes during the day what their actual electricity consumption was and what the costs were. And for some customers that are on what's called a pool price pass-through plan, they can actually use that information to further optimize their electricity consumption and driving down their costs. And next to that, we currently also are leveraging AI within the company to streamline processes to make sure that, we need, let's say, as least effort as possible to support our customers. So that's on the energy retail side. On the energy production side, we also have what's called Flow Solar Solutions, where we invest in the solar assets on the roof of a customer of ours, and this customer signs a long-term PPA with us. And again, using the smart meter data, we can show the customer what the production of their solar asset, or effectively our solar asset, on their roof was, so they can display that to their customers, showing their commitment to building a more renewable future. The last product that Flow Energy offers in Singapore is what's called tenant management solutions, where we deploy our own smart meter infrastructure for large shopping malls or large hotel chains, where they can granularly measure the electricity consumption of their tenants or specific appliances or specific parts of their building. And those smart meters are very granular. So a typical smart meter in Singapore, as being installed by the SP Group, measures it at a 30-minute interval. And these meters are capable of measuring all the way up to 1 second intervals, giving customers a very clear view on when and where and how much electricity is consumed by the various parts of their business.
Wow, fantastic. Looks like technology is doing so much for the customers these days. And looking to the future, what do you think the energy market will look like in perhaps 10 years? Do you foresee a time when renewable energy could be the dominant source of energy in Singapore and other Southeast Asian nations?
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. So I foresee in the future that the energy system will become much more granular, much more interconnected, not only between countries, but also between end users and the market. So we already see that the amount of battery capacity that's being installed is growing. I think Europe is a great example there, where you have these really large, and Australia as well, by the way, these really large battery assets that are used to actually fill the gaps between the supply and demand, so the supply of renewable energy and the demand by the market. And I think we'll see more and more of these interconnected assets managing the supply of electricity. So we're really moving away from big, centralized, top-down produced electricity to more distributed energy resources working in harmony to supply the end customers and the society with 100% renewable electricity.
Wow, exciting space to be in. Before we wrap up, what's one piece of advice you would give to consumers in Southeast Asia who are interested in moving towards renewable energy, as well as for businesses or even policymakers? What's the most important thing they can do to support the energy transition?
Well, I think for the end customer, I would say, especially here in Singapore, if you have a roof, put solar on it. It's the best investment you can do at this point in time. And for policymakers, I would make sure that they identify the hurdles that are there at this point in time and try to work with the industry to see how they can accelerate the adoption and the incorporation of renewable energy production, but also assets supporting that renewable energy production, like batteries or electric cars, in order to move away as quickly as possible from the fossil fuel power generation, because it's very clear that we need to limit the carbon intensity of the electricity market.
And for businesses?
For businesses, it's almost the same. I would say if you as a business have a roof, if you have the money to put the solar on it, if you don't, reach out to us and switch to us, because we can either supply you with renewable energy or invest in the asset on your rooftop, and you can enjoy the electricity produced on your own roof without the burden of high capex and maintenance. So I think the best advice I can give them is switch to flow energy.
Excellent stuff, Matt. Thanks for sharing your insights on renewable energy in Singapore and Southeast Asia from the perspective of an electricity retailer. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
And he is Matthijs Guichelaar, co-founder and CEO of Flow Energy, which is the largest independent electricity retailer in Singapore. You've been listening to Industry Insight with me, Lin Lee.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.